maybe I can start this off with my own like theme song. Gotta read them all, TBR. Wow, that actually, okay. Cha-ching. Hey everyone, it's Anne. Okay, January tends to be a weird month for me. Everyone else is talking about like, these are my TBRs for the month and the year and like all the shiny new things, and I'm over here still living in 2022 trying to clear out my current reads because I have a problem, as I detailed out in an earlier video. Feel free to watch it. But now that January is almost done, and honestly, I've started adding even more books to my TBR because I'm insane. I figured I need to get this done on paper, video, and it's time to talk about the books that I have planned to read in 2023. So my plan is 40 books, which I know there's some people that are like, I plan to read 200 books. So 40 honestly doesn't sound that intimidating, but as you guys have seen, I have small children in a home that we generally like to keep kept. So my plan is to read 40 books, and they are thick books, like 5 C's thick books. So 2023 has pretty much become the year where I read the books that I feel like I should have already read, but for some reason I haven't, probably because they intimidated me for whatever reason, and it's time for me to read them. I know, it's a long title. The marketing department is working on a shorter catchphrase. Let's just call it 2023 TBR. So, I'm technically almost a month behind, LOL. And if you are already behind on your 2023 TBR, like this video. Camaraderie, all that stuff. And also leave me a comment telling me which book you are most excited to read on your TBR for this year. Let's begin. Okay, first, I have what I'm considering the freebies. They're not like super planned, but it's where in general I want to read this amount. So I have where I want to read 6 classics that aren't already chosen. Okay, so 6 classics and 3 2022 Goodreads winners. Like, however we feel about Goodreads, I feel like it is an award that people know about. So I'll pick 3 of them and read them. And then the classics, it can be just whatever. I have some ideas, but we'll see what ends up happening throughout the year. I'm much more of a mood reader than a planned TBR, so we'll also see how this goes. But to also help me expand my reading choices, because otherwise, as you'll see, the ones that I have planned, it's pretty much all high fantasy. Pretty much all of them. So to help expand that, I am doing the 52 Book Club's 2023 Reading Challenge. So 52 books, they give me prompts, and a lot of the prompts, honestly, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know if I would pick that myself, but here we go. So that's going to help keep things expanded, go a little bit wide, but also with my planned reading, we're going to go deep. So that's already 9 books, 6 classics, 3 Goodread winners. And now let's talk about the physical books that I have. Physical books that I have. Because they are tiny. These all of them? Nope. There we are. These are the physical books that I have. Okay. So really, I'm not really starting off with Mistborn, but since I have it here, we can chat about it. And let's also like move some of these. Okay. So Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series, Era 1, the first era. I've never read them. So many YouTubers, booktubers that I follow, they have read it, they love it, and I mean, it's Brandon Sanderson. Like, I've watched all of his writing series on YouTube, and so now it's like, well, let's actually see if we can pick up on some things in here. So, read the first 3, that's the plan. Then, I have already started on this. Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings has to be the one series that I have started and stopped the most. And I think it's because I didn't have an appreciation for what he did. And it honestly wasn't until I started writing my own novel, or like attempting to, let's be real, that I could actually sit down, read Lord of the Rings, and appreciate exactly all that he did. Because wow. Just wow. But all 3 of those, I've already read The Hobbit. I read that a while ago. So now it's time to read Lord of the Rings, and not just the movies. All right, so what is next? Oh, okay. So as far as spiritual reading goes, just kind of mix things up. I'm gonna, like, this is the year. The whole Bible and the Catechism of the Catholic Church. This is the year. I'm gonna do it. I'm already behind, but I'm gonna do it. By the end of this year, I'm gonna have read both these cover to cover. I got this. Okay, and then this is an interesting one. Okay, so Terry Goodkind, Wizard's First Rule. My husband loves this series, loves it. And he will, like, anyone that says anything about it, he doesn't listen to you, essentially. I feel as though, based off of like the people that I follow on the YouTube, I've only heard not great things about this series, but I have also promised my husband I would eventually read it. So this is the year that I'm going to start reading it. But I also want to read this while also reading The Wheel of Time. I think at one point I did finish The Eye of the World, but it's been so long that I'm like, I don't know what happened. So what I want to do is have it where with these 2, because most people, they read Wheel of Time or they read Wizard's First Rule and they start to think like, you know, Terry Goodkind may have copied off of Robert Jordan and some of that stuff. And so that's where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a more critical eye to these books and see, do I think that, not that he like plagiarized, but like, we just walked that fine line between I copied your story and it's a trope. You know what I mean? So we'll see. But yes, there's that. And that covers the planned physical TBR for 2023. Let's start talking about the digital, or let's be honest, the library. Thank the Lord for the library. Digital or library books. Either way. Okay. These split up into two different groups, really. And so I'll talk about the first group and then the second group, because that's how numbers work. But the first group is the reading schedule for the Close Reads podcast. I don't know if you guys know this, but people have like book club podcasts, and some of them are great. One of them being the Close Reads podcast. I enjoy this podcast because it almost feels like this is the English class that I wish I had in high school or college. They do cover, here's the main plot points that happened, but they do go a little bit deeper to where it's, okay, let's talk about themes. And like, for example, right now, January, they're going through Persuasion by Jane Austen. And Persuasion is definitely Jane Austen's book that, again, I pick up and I start, and for some reason I can't get into it, so I always put it down. This time, I'm actually past where I normally stop, and they even mentioned, like, you probably put it down by chapter 7 because it felt like nothing is really happening. And I was like, yes, it's because nothing is really happening. And then they say, well, they talked about how, like, publishing back in Jane Austen's time, how she probably did that because as she published in volumes, this would have been the 50% mark instead of the 25% mark. And so at the 50% mark, then she made it where the rest of the book was, hey, the main male character shows up, and now you're invested and you want to pick up the second volume. And it totally made sense. For me, having it all in one volume, I was like, this is boring me. But now I understand why I kept stopping. And I've made it past this time. So definitely check out the Close Reads podcast. I love them. This is the schedule for 2023. And so I'll just flash the covers up if you have a question. But so far, right now, January, LOL, we have been reading Persuasion, which I have been reading slowly, but Persuasion by Jane Austen. And then in February, it will be the Netanyahus. Never heard about it. I totally trust them, though. The next is in March, which it looks like it's just like a 2-week thing, but it's Pygmalion. Yes. Have I read that one before? I think I've read this play before. I think I have. I may be getting it confused with The Importance of Being Earnest. Or maybe I read them all at the same time. I think I read them all at the same time. It doesn't matter. Either way, that's what I'm going to be reading in March. And then March, April area is The Diary of a Country Priest. April to May is The Optimist's Daughter. And then May to June is The Scarlet Letter, which I was supposed to read in high school. Didn't catch the importance of, like, why am I reading this book? So I am interested to actually have a book that I was supposed to read in high school that Close Reads will be talking about this year. And hopefully I'll be able to catch on to, oh, this is why I was supposed to read that in high school. Whoops. And then they pick up in July with Everything Sad is Untrue. July, well, it looks like honestly the whole month of August is The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I more read that in high school, but it still was where I didn't fully understand, like, why should I care about this? So very interested. And then September is One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, something like that. Excited for that one. October is The Moving Toy Shop. October, November area, A Canticle for Leibowitz. And then to finish out the year is Things Fall Apart. Honestly, I totally trust them. With all these books, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I totally trust them. Really, only the classics are the ones that I've heard of before. So we'll see. We shall see. If you guys start listening to them because of this video, feel free to fangirl out in the comments with me, okay? Or let me know what you're thinking. Whichever you want to call it, your thoughts or fangirl. All right, so that's the first part. Second part of digital or library, essentially, I don't have it right now, is the Spiffbo 8, Series 8, I don't know how to call it, but the finalists for this year. Spiffbo, if you don't know about this is the self-published fantasy blog off. So they've already narrowed it down. It's a whole thing. We can chat about it later. All of the blogs that were selected to read these, they will read all 10 of these. They'll give their ratings. And then at the end, whoever wins essentially gets a sticker on the cover of their self-published book, which is awesome, honestly, because so many people, like, they're talking about self-published authors, and this is the most marketing that a self-published author is probably going to get, like, without doing it themselves. So I'd like to read the finalists, and those 10 are Tethered Spirits by T.A. Hernandez, Small Victories by Olivia Atwater, Fire of the Forebears by L.A. Buck, which personally, I think that's the one, at least reading the description, I feel like this is the one that I'm going to enjoy the most, but I'm willing to be surprised. Scales and Sensibility by Stephanie Burgess, which is a fantasy retelling of Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I might pull that as one of my 6 classics, or it may just be where I'm like, this is too much Jane Austen. We'll see. The 13th Hour by Trudy Skies, The Umbral Storm by Alec Hudson, A Touch of Light by Thiago Abdallah, A Song for the Void by Andrew C. Piazza, Mysterious Ways by Abby Evans, Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons by Quinby Olson. Okay, so Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons, that seems to be more of a cozy fantasy, but I don't know, there's something about it, like reading the description, I think I'm gonna enjoy it. The cozy fantasy phenomena that's happening right now, I don't know exactly how I feel about it, besides I think I'm okay with it. We'll see. maybe it'll be a good balance between, like, you know, The Eye of the World and here's Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. We'll see. But so that covers the planned TBR. Now, there are a few books that I've kind of been thinking about because I know I'm going to read them anyways. So why not just pretend like, oh yeah, I totally planned this. Cool, good. So one of that is finishing ACOTAR series. So I've already finished A Court of Wings and Ruin. I am working my way through A Court of Frost and Starlight. And then I will finish A Court of Silver Flames. Oh man, I need to dust my shelves. Good night. Why am I doing that though? So this is where, like, yes, booktube, hey, but I also have started writing my own novel. Now, before you totally like blank out and be like, oh dear God, not another one. Okay, I have no training. I did not take a creative writing class. I did not take a writing anything in college. So essentially I'm going off of what I find on YouTube and reading good books. So in some ways that's kind of the side part to why I'm reading all of these books that I feel like I should have already read, but haven't for some reason, probably because they were so intimidating to me. Well, now I'm reading them, mainly to have it where I'm learning from the greats what makes a good book. Well, I'm not saying that she is like the greats, okay? But Sarah J. Maas, she is definitely a contemporary author to pay attention to. And her latest release last year was, oh, I need to get these down. Crescent City, House of Sky, and Breath, okay? Her latest ones. This was the series that I actually jumped in on the Sarah J. Maas bandwagon and figured out like, oh, this is why everyone loves her. And then I read ACOTAR and I was like, holy cuss, this is why everyone loves her. Either way, I was very excited for this book. Very excited for this book. And I read it super quick. I enjoyed it. And then I started seeing other people posting that they either like hated it or they thought it was her worst book she's ever written. And I'd like to break it down as to like why you probably thought that way. But instead of going at it from like, here's a book review, it's where I'm going to be looking at it as if I'm a writer and an editor and breaking it down that way. And so then we're able to see, okay, this is probably why you may have thought this was her weakest book so far. And also, Sarah J. Maas, feel free to release the third. There are very few pleasures in my life because I have small children. Have I mentioned that before? And I wouldn't mind spending a whole weekend just reading a book. But that's the thing. With this channel, I'll have it where once I finish ACOTAR and A Court of Silver Flames, that whole series, because if you've read the end of Crescent City, you understand why, then I'll be able to reread these and break it down. And we'll start then. So if you guys haven't read this yet, maybe it's on your list for this year. I'll try to keep you updated as to when I will be doing that breakdown. Cool. And that's it.